VigilanteWilliamson here with a very simple question. That is, what do we think about Deontay Wilder's career as a whole? He said before his fight with Zhilei Zhang that if he lost, he'd retire, and he got knocked out. And a lot of people are writing off his whole career, and rightfully so. His career never quite lived up to the potential that it probably should have. What could have been? What could have Deontay Wilder been had he actually trained, something he admitted and bragged about not doing? Had he actually been matched up to fight the best talent, or at least step up his talent as he got better? Had he had that fight with Joshua at the time? I know a lot of people think Joshua will win now, given their recent history, and that's understandable as well. But, I mean, Joshua had his own growing pains. What could have happened if he was managed better? Before we get too deep into this video, if you like it already, please like the video. If you're so obliged to share and subscribe, because sharing is caring, I'd appreciate that. And even if you do none of these things, thank you for watching. Appreciate you being here. So Deontay Wilder, I don't even know if I was a fan. Like, I'm not going to listen. We know when you lose, everybody hates you and you're trash and nobody cares. And I'm not going to act like I never cared about Deontay Wilder's career, or like I didn't want to see Zhilei Zhang and Wilder fight at one point. You know, I thought of them as two of the hardest hitting heavyweights in the division, at least right now. And Zhang said he didn't even feel the power, and he got hit with some clean shots and he pretty much ate him. And so now you look back at Deontay Wilder's career, and I've seen a lot of channels do retrospectives, probably with more detail than this one will have, to be honest. I can't help but to think, man, what would have happened if, way back in the day, shout out to Detroit, it always goes back to Detroit, Emmanuel Stewart said the two heavyweight champions that he saw were Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Of course, both were eventually heavyweight champions at one point. But what if Wilder would have worked with someone like Emmanuel Stewart? Obviously, Emmanuel Stewart passed on, but what if he would have got that type of training? Even Sugar Hill. I mean, Wilder, I know he started late. He started at 19, but he never lived the boxer life. I mean, granted, he didn't get too big in between fights. He never had that much weight, but he never trained or didn't train properly. He admitted to saying, oh, you know, I don't really have to train. All he did was focus on that right hand. He knocked out a lot of plumbers and Uber Eats drivers to be fairly respectable. And he really wasn't respectable. He really never maxed out his potential. He wasn't stepped up properly. You know, you look at his resume of wins. I mean, what is his two best wins? Luis Ortiz, Dominic Brazil. Are these his best wins? I like Ortiz. I thought Ortiz was a good fighter. It goes back to these guys stay in the amateurs too long with Ortiz, because he was obviously an older fighter, even taking blood pressure medicine. Could have been in his 40s or 50s. Who knows how old Luis Ortiz is or was when he fought Wilder. And he actually looked good against Wilder, to be fair, even though Wilder was able to knock him out. In fact, a lot of people Wilder knocked out looked good in the fight. He never learned his skills. He never learned fundamentals with boxing. You know what I mean? And I can't help but to look at this as sad. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not an LDBC guy. I'm not a big fan of Al Heyman. I think Al Heyman's, you know, protected boxing champions logic really hurt boxing for the longest. And that's the reason we need Turk Al-Sheikh, regardless of what you think of the Saudis. They're undoing a lot of damage Al Heyman did. And it didn't just hurt Wilder. It probably hurt Spence and some other fighters that were there long term. Maybe Ruiz to some extent. Another what-if guy. And that's Ruiz, while we're on him. Deontay Wilder could have beaten Anthony Joshua. Don't get me wrong. I think Anthony Joshua was the better fighter, but he had his growing pains too. If you remember, whenever Ruiz fight happened, a lot of names were brought up to have the fight go ahead, because it was supposed to be Joshua and Miller, Big Baby Miller, but he got caught with a bunch of stuff in his system. So they ended up with Andy Ruiz as a replacement. Well, what if it was Deontay Wilder? You know what I'm saying? If you remember that camp, there was alleged that Anthony Joshua had some sort of issues, maybe got concussed or knocked out during camp, and the fight still went along. I'm not saying that happened. I just remember those rumors at the time. And that means, who knows? Deontay Wilder could have potentially won the undisputed championship before Usyk even comes up to heavyweight. And who knows how his career would have happened. I'm not necessarily saying I would have picked him in that fight, but because of Anthony Joshua's own growing pains, because of the issues that he had, there's a chance he could have won. there's a chance he could have also lost because he, like I said, he never developed properly. But we don't know. We'll never know because he was never put in that position. He was never put in position to fail until the Saudis came along. They started tossing paper at him like a substitute teacher. So, shout out to Lloyd Banks. So we'll never know how good he was. We just got to look at him as this disappointment. It's hard not to look at him as a disappointment, man. As champion, didn't do much. Only reason he fought Tyson Fury was as a cherry pick gone wrong, and he helped launch his career. And by the way, Tyson Fury, his career doesn't look that great either. I mean, now you look at his biggest victory outside of Klitschko, who was older at the time, but his best victory outside of that is Wilder, and look what he looks like. Granted, you can make the argument, and I would even agree to it, that Wilder's not in his prime. I don't think this is the prime Wilder, but even prime Wilder didn't really put in the effort that he really should have. He didn't put in the effort he really should have, and therefore he didn't become the champion that he really could have. And it's sad to me. It's sad. It's indicative of what the whole boxing scene has been the past 5 or 10 years, where a lot of guys who had a lot of talent didn't really maximize it, didn't really match up. That's starting to change. And we got to give the Saudis their credit. They're saving boxing from itself because we would not get all this exposure. Not just of guys like Wilder. I mean, Craig Spider Richards, who, you know, was a close fight, but he lost. We see a lot of these guys losing on these fights and having these fights. Philip Hergovic, a few weeks ago or a month ago. Obviously, Tyson Fury, but on the undercard, we had Frank Sanchez. On the undercard, we had Frank Sanchez lose. A lot of these guys, we didn't know who's good, who's not. And, you know, before they would have just stayed in their own pockets and never matched up. No, now these guys are matching up. Now these guys are getting in the ring, and we're starting to figure out who's good and figure out what from what. And I feel like we had a whole generation when we didn't figure that out. And Deontay Wilder is kind of endemic of that generation of faking the funk, basically. Not even showing up, not even really having the type of fights you need to have to know who's good, and just making it seem like you're better than what you are and trying to sell fights that really aren't good enough fights to the stands that you have. It was a very stand-based era where you cater to your stands, you have them argue with other people's stands, you never have to prove who's the best. It's all about speculation, and you too could make millions off boxing doing that. And it was kind of a scam era, and shout out to the Saudis again. They're changing that. Now guys have to fight each other. Now we're seeing who's really good. Dane Dubois had a second win in his career, same with Joseph Parker, Zane to some extent, because they have to fight guys now. And so shout out to the Saudis, but I can't help but to think Deontay Wilder, if he had people that cared about him, I don't think the people around him ever cared about him. They just looked at him as a circus freak they can make money off of. I'm not trying to be offensive, but he only had one trick, and that was that right hand. And they just figured, how can we protect him, make sure he can keep knocking out Uber Eats drivers, and we can keep getting paid. If he had somebody who cared about his development as a boxer, forced him to live the boxing life a little bit more, forced him to step up earlier in his career so he didn't have 30 or 40 fights before he even fought anybody, he would have developed more. Even if he would have taken some losses along the way, he would have been a better fighter and probably closer to being a Hall of Famer or a legend than he is now. I don't think, maybe he ends up in the Hall of Fame. Who knows? I don't think he should, though. But what do you think? I've been rambling. What do you think about Deontay Wilder's career? Do you think of him still as some sort of great? Do you don't care about what happened? Are you just saying, hey, he was good, but then he fell off at the end of his career? Sorry for all the fidgeting. I have a neck issue that I've been dealing with all week. This video almost didn't get made. In any event, if you like the video, please like the video. If you're so obliged to share and subscribe, please do that. And even if you do none of these things, thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. Good night and God bless. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.